All right. So what we wanted to talk about on this little chat was the state of poor America, lower middle class America, and ways to get around that. Because we do a lot of talking about issues, we raise up different issues, but we don't always talk about different solutions and finding the not just the reason why people are in certain situations, but how to get out of them. And that's always my biggest thing is like, okay, we understand there's an issue. How do you fix the issue?
What this country is based on. It's based on money, right? I mean, everybody's about the dollar. I mean, so at the end of the day, we have people who are trying to maintain the structure that's in place because they're benefiting from it. So, I mean, I think you have to tackle that first.
So
you have to tackle that as well.
So who do you think benefits the most from poverty, from keeping people impoverished? Me personally, I think it's governments. I think they benefit the most because they have the most control. Yeah, so I think the number one group that benefits the most are politicians.
Politicians, but you got to remember politicians are also one and the same as private entities, private corporations, the board. I mean, we allow politicians and wealthy individuals to just rotate back and forth between maintaining these positions on corporate boards and then taking government positions. So, politicians, i.e., people who hold these, positions on the corporate boards and such.
So what do you think? So it depends depending on the corporation that you're talking about. So I what's the benefit? What's the benefit of a large corporation to keep people poor? You're saying money?
Yeah, I mean that's what it's all about. Money.
So what's the benefit of Walmart to keep people poor? Why would they go out of their way to keep people impoverished?
Well, I wouldn't say somebody like Walmart's not going out of their way to keep people impoverished. It's Walmart's strategy, is not a good strategy for their employees. Walmart's strategy is to, go into a neighborhood, with very low prices, put everybody else, put the local competition out of business, and then when local competition is gone, then they jack up their prices. They pay very low wages, but again, when you're the only supplier or retailer in town, you can do what you want. So, I mean, that's just their corporate strategy. It really, I wouldn't necessarily say their intention is to keep people poor.
Well, and I think this is where I'm going more. Mm-hmm. Politicians want to keep people poor more than corporations want to keep people poor.
I got you.
Corporations are going more for, like you said, the competition, right?
Right. So profit.
It's different than keeping an individual in a situation. A corporation, in my view, is they're trying to keep the competition down as much as possible versus wanting to see people poor. Because if you have a corporation and you have a business like Walmart, well, the more money circulating, the more money is going in your pocket. So you're better off.
Right.
So that's where I differentiate between the two. I can see where you're coming from, but
because here's where I'm going with it. More like you got a contractor or you got a developer out there, right? So, hey, they get business for building these subsidized housing units, right? So, I mean, if I build the subsidized housing, I can get government grants. I can collect rent at I can get government money for these apartments or whatever. But at the same time, I have somebody who's on my board serving as an alderman or serving as a council member. That's what I mean by, they're kind of one and the same sometimes.
Yeah, no, so that I agree with you 100%. 100%. And one thing that I've been saying for years is every single dollar, with the exception of national security stuff, every single dollar that goes into the government, especially state and locally, should be on a spreadsheet. It should be accessible, dollar in, dollar out. We should be able to see all of that.
Okay, now why did you cut out? You said everything except for, you said military. What'd you say?
National security stuff.
National security, because you want that kept secret.
Yes.
Okay, I got you.
Correct.
But there's going to be waste though if you don't have it. I mean, and there already is.
There's so much waste right now. Yeah. I don't know what the number is of waste. I'm just my own personal guess. I would guess that waste is probably 20 to 30% of everything is just waste.
Yeah,
Will it be
maybe even
something
more.
like
So,
that? Huh?
I said maybe even more. So, yeah.
It could be. Yeah, I have no idea what that number is. Nobody does because we don't see it. But if especially you're talking about locally, if you can see dollar in, dollar out, you'll know if that alderman is giving those contracts to their friends, which we
Right.
know they're doing,
Which they
but they're
do.
not held accountable for it.
And they're not held accountable because we don't hold them accountable.
Exactly.
Because we put in the same people who do the same shit. We allow them to sit in office for 20, 30 years.
Yep.
And here's, I guess, where I always differ. It's not a Republican or Democrat thing. It's whoever's in power thing. And
Yep.
you go state by state or county by county. The people who are in charge usually they've been holding or been in charge for years. So with that, there's no accountability and there's no, there's no checks and balances. So they can do what they want with the money. And that's why you just see all this waste and corruption and it just goes unchecked. So
yeah, and we're in 100% agreement on that. But so going back to the original topic, it's those people, especially state and locally, that they don't want to see people grow because they're going to lose their voter base. They're already suckers, right? If you're an alderman in Chicago and you've been an alderman forever, you've got your base. You don't have to do anything for them.
You got your base, but at the same time, it's like you can make a promise to your base, and if you can deliver on it, then you're going to keep that base. But what it is I think it's harder to keep these promises. So instead of, I'm going to deliver so many jobs to this community, or I'm going to bring this person in or bring this company in, it's like, damn, I can't do what I said I'm going to do, but I can make myself some money. So fuck it. I'm just going to keep making my money. And hopefully I can dupe people to stay in office, which I can.
Exactly. So that goes to my original thing where when it's getting out of poverty is a mindset. To me, it's the most important thing is a mindset. Okay. If you have a mindset to achieve anything, as long as you have the tools, you're going to be able to accomplish it. Right. If you have the mindset.
Yeah. There's a
That's
lot of breaks that some people do and don't get. I think you can say, I won't be with that mindset. Maybe you won't be as bad or in, worse position, but maybe only make a small step. You know what I'm saying? So I think the mindset is one thing you have to have, but there are a lot of things that go into play or go along that way.
No, I'm not saying they're not. I'm saying it's the most important thing. That's the first step is what I'm saying. You're right. So different people are going to have different advantages and you're going to have different hurdles. But without the mindset, you're lost. You're never going to reach your
You're talking
goals.
about strictly for a poor person though, or strictly for somebody in a.
No, this is for anybody.
If you're born with a silver spoon and you have that mindset, you can fail again, and then you get all these chances because you have that safety net.
No, you're missing what I'm saying. I'm talking about the mindset to reach your potential. So it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor.
Right. All right.
So if you have a goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're born with a silver spoon, you have the advantage. Everybody knows that. There's no denying that. But there's nothing that prevents. There's hurdles, yes. There's nothing that prevents a poor person from achieving more than they've seen and more than they're accustomed to. And there's nothing, as long as they have the capability. Like, what am I going to say? Oh, you know what? I'm gonna be a dunk champion. Okay, that's a goal in life, right? It's never going to happen, right? It's just because I don't have those capabilities. But can I do other stuff that's within my capabilities? Yes. And that's where the mindset comes into play.
Right. But I think that mindset, though, can also be deterred or you could lose that track of that mindset given your circumstances. I think a lot of things, some people in some communities, they're suffering. They have PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
Soldiers get it when they go to war. Imagine if you live in a certain area, a certain neighborhood, that shit sticks with you too. So your neighborhood, your family, all that, it plays into it. So in terms of like when we're getting to solutions, I'm going to kick it off. One of the things I think we need to start doing is, like government housing, subsidized housing. That's like a right in this country. You're entitled to housing no matter what, and I think people use that as a crutch instead of, it should be really a stepping stone or, a way to get from point A to point B. So if I know I'm not going to be able, or I'm not going to have access to government housing my whole life, or for 10 years or 20 years, then I have to do something to, better myself in the present. So one thing we need to do is, I think we need to eliminate, public housing for life. And well, I think the reason why you won't see that, though, is because, again, there are a lot of people who get paid for these housing, like, skip the independent, landlords that rent to Section 8 tenants and, whatever, they get government money. Just think about the big developers. Think about, the people who build these multi-unit apartments, and the rents they charge. Like, look at Chicago. I mean, you got people building these big apartments charging, people $2,000, $1,500 for apartments that wouldn't get that in the open market, but they can charge them because the government's paying half of it. And by the government is paying for it, middle-class people, the taxpayers are really paying for it. So I think one of the things we need to do is eliminate public housing as a right for certain individuals that's given to them, for damn near eternity.
So there's no incentive to achieve anything, and it's by design.
Yeah.
They're not incentivized to be successful. And you can see it. Anybody can really see it. So my big proposal is there should be a cap on how long you're available to get any kind of financial aid, any welfare, anything. There should be a cap.
Okay.
And to me, it should be 6 years. And the reason why I say 6 years, and it shouldn't be 6 years where it's just enough to barely keep, and it's going to keep you poor. It should be 6 years, right? So you have a family, right? You got a family of 5, you got mom, dad, you got 3 kids. They should have enough money every year so mom and dad can do one of 2 things. Go to school, finish, get a degree. They can get a good paying job, or they can work in a business, wherever that might be. Within 6 years, you should be able to work yourself up to the point where you can provide for your family.
Right.
It should, but that's it.
I like that. The only thing I would say is, instead of, maybe you do a year, maybe you do a maximum year, but I would say as long as you are reaching, or you have certain milestones, like if you're in, certain graduate or certain school programs, as long as you're hitting a milestone or a stepping stone, then you are entitled to this. But, whatever. But there should be certain goals that you are hitting that, okay, I will be independent, self-sufficient at this point.
So here, this is my problem with that. And it goes in whenever you see a government program, those milestones become smaller and easier, because then all of a sudden it comes out and saying, oh, there's all these issues with the milestone. So if you're saying, okay, I'm going to school for 4 years. Okay, now all of a sudden I'm in med school, I'm in grad school, I'm doing all this other stuff. I have no problem with milestones if they're real milestones. I don't want to. I don't want it. Oh, you have 6 years and I have my associates. That's not a milestone. You see what I'm saying?
No, that's what I said. I mean, they have to be real. Things that are attainable and that will put you on that path to independent. Independent living. I mean,
yeah. So, and I think that's what needs to happen is you can't keep telling everybody, we're going to give you. You deserve all this stuff. You have to be contributing. If you're not, you're stuck in a cycle that the government wants to keep you in. They don't want you out of that cycle.
But do you believe that the government doesn't want to keep you, or wants to keep you in that cycle because they benefit financially, or is it another meaning?
Both. They get votes. It's a guaranteed vote for them. It's a guaranteed vote. So they're all of a sudden, do you think if there's term limits, the people would be voting the way that the politicians would be voting? Hell no.
But the thing is, a lot of poor people don't vote, though. So
because they think they don't want to stop the money train.
But they don't vote. That's what I'm saying, though. So I mean, if you're doing it strictly just for the vote, you're going after the wrong base, though, because a lot of them don't turn out.
A lack of a vote is a vote. It's true. The lack of a vote is a vote. It depends on the year and on the party. But the turnout this year, if there's a high turnout, Trump's going to win in a landslide. If it's a low turnout, Biden has a chance.
I actually think it's the opposite.
Well, we'll talk about that later.
I
But
think it's the opposite.
but typically you don't want the turnout, because how do most when you start looking right now, if you're being successful and you're achieving things and you're getting out of your bubble and out of your cycle, and you're becoming more worldly and you're seeing things differently, that's going to change your opinion on a lot of different things as far as politics go.
No, right. So I think agreement that, though, like one of your biggest expenses or costs in life is your living expense, so if people have to worry about that and take accountability for themselves without the help of the government, that's a huge step, and a savings for the government, financially, but it's also going to better your, it's going to better this country, because now you have individuals who are capable of, doing for themselves. So,
and it changes as soon as you accomplish something in life, it's just it's a relief, and it's also, you have that self gratitude, right?
Exactly.
So, and all of a sudden you have this boost in confidence. Like, I can achieve more. I can keep going. And who sees that? Your kids see that. Your nieces and nephews see that. And all of a sudden, so like my big thing is right. So so with all my kids, I tell them, whatever you do, just be better than me. Right? Just be better than me. Each generation, and you're achieving more and you're stepping up. What's happening now is, in a lot of situations, if you achieve more, it's not a positive thing. You're talked down upon, or you think you're better than me type of situation. And it's so ass backwards.
Yeah, I would say that's a neighborhood thing too. And then here's another thing I got. Once you take care of the housing situation, where you're making parents accountable, and you know what? There's another thing too before we move on. If you're getting assistance for housing, for food, there's no way in hell then that you can't be a full-time parent and make sure that your kids' studies, their education is being done. And even if you don't understand the work, you can stay on them, because you're not doing, you're not working 40 hours a week. So I mean, essentially they're being paid to be good parents, but they're not fulfilling that promise. So,
and they're failing at that.
So maybe, we talk about, but I'm not even gonna go in that. I still, just that's a failure right there. But okay, so you cap their housing situation for poor people, but I think everybody benefits from doing that. But then number two, what you have to do is, I think you have to equally fund all these schools, because the kid shouldn't be at fault because of something his parents did. And if the parents are in such a situation, maybe they aren't, maybe they don't have the sense or the financial senses or the education to help you better yourself. But you should be able to go to school and pick that stuff up. But if your neighborhood is shit and your school is shit and your parents are shit, it's you're setting somebody up for failure.
Yep.
So you have to like, at least, every school is never going to be the same, because if you live in a rich neighborhood, they can always put more money in, which they should be entitled to. But there should be a bare minimum standard that every school in this country has. And I don't understand why we can't do that, because we have so much money.
No, so I don't disagree with that. I would like to see the funding, the true funding for each of these schools, because I haven't seen it anywhere. You hear about it. Oh, we're underfunding. Okay, prove it. How are you the CPS? You get billions of dollars and you can't put out top-notch schools.
Or you're a CPS and you're on strike and you're saying we haven't received new books in 20 years. It's like, well, what the hell have you been doing for the past 20 years? The strike should have happened a long time ago then. It's like, right, you can't have all this funding. You can't produce some of these top-notch high schools, because Chicago does have some top high schools, public high schools, but then they have some of the crappiest.
Yeah.
So again, I think every school should, like you said, open the books so
Yep.
we can see the money, we can see the waste and eliminate it. And here's another problem you could solve by adequately funding schools is you can pay teachers what they deserve to be paid. That way, you can ensure that the teachers you have their full focus and they're able to give that to their students, and their students are able to learn and pick that up. So even if they're going home to a broken home, they know that in their school they can pick up A, B, and C, and then they can better their situation. And that's why, poor people do have access to free college. But what is free college if your grammar school, your high school were shit? You're not going to make it to that point.
No, that's true. That is very true, because if you don't have the tools and you go in there day one, by the end of the week, you're so lost. You realize how out of place you are.
And you might give up.
Exactly. Exactly. But so I don't have, and I don't know the number. I have no idea.
I don't care about the numbers either. I think we know what it is. I mean, somewhere we can always guesstimate, but
yeah. So, but I agree that each state, and every state's going to be different. So each state's going to have that bare minimum of what it costs to properly run a school, right?
And each state, yeah. Each state's going
to be different. So I agree. And like you said, okay, well, locally, if you move out into you live into different neighborhoods, the schools are going to be better. One, because you're going to have higher taxes, so it's going to go there. But what happens? It's not just the taxes. So like they have. So where my kids go to school, District 203, they, even with all the money here, they do fundraisers nonstop.
I get it. Yeah.
So there's a lot of different layers that go. But you're right. It does start at home, because if you're at the best school, and when you go home, you're not pushed to be a good student, you're not going to be a good student.
So I get it. We're not, or at least I'm not trying to make every school equal on all accounts or take away advantages, because you'll never do that. And that's probably not a place I would want to live anyway, where, I mean, that's not what this is about. It's not a dictatorship. You're always going to have people who have more money, and people with more money, hopefully, they're going to put that money toward their kids and their education, their learning, their experiences. So, they're always going to be better.
But if you graduate from high school, from any high school, you should be prepared to at least take entry-level college classes.
You know what, though, too? Here's what we used to do. That Chicago used to have vocational schools where you could come out of high school and you'd have like so much completed where you could be a barber, electrician, a plumber. Why did they do away with that stuff? And now why do you need the high school, which does prepare you? Now you need to go to this school where you pay, X amount of dollars, which you don't have. But then again, if you're poor, you can get, free money that the school gets. But then again, if the kid's not prepared, that money just turns into waste because they flunk out. But again, the school gets paid, and the school may be a government entity, or it may have, again, it all revolves around making money, keeping people in that current cycle. But we need to create schools again. They don't have to be, but
I've been pushing vocational schools for years. The easiest way to turn around a neighborhood is listen, you want a job, we're gonna pay for your vocational, we're gonna take care of you until you're fully trained. And then all these rundown houses and all the houses that have the big red X on them, you pay these people to fix up their neighborhoods.
They have the skills already.
They have the skills.
And that's what. So isn't that the whole point of going to school, to pick up skills that you could use in life?
Yes.
And so that's why it's just backwards that some of these schools aren't teaching the basic.
Exactly.
Stuff.
So the city owns so much property.
Mm-hmm.
So why not just go and say, you fix up this neighborhood, you fix up this house, we're going to give you this house dirt cheap. So now you're part of the community. If you fix something, if it's yours, how do you treat it?
A hell of a lot better. That you always treat something better that you earned, you worked for, and you paid, better than something that's handed to you for nothing.
Exactly. It's just common sense. Give people the tools to be successful. If they have a mindset and they have the tools to be successful, chances are they will be. Not every case. There's always going to be cases, outliers. You can't deal with 100% certainties. But if you give people that opportunity, you can fix up any neighborhood. if you put the people that live there and give them a chance to keep that neighborhood, so it's not all gentrified, but you keep their neighborhood, but they can actually be like, okay, look at my block. My block, you know what I mean? Look at these houses, look at these lawns, look at these neighborhoods, look at the parks, look at the schools. I'm proud because we made this our neighborhood and we fixed this shit up.
Right. So I think with those two things alone, if you can cap the public housing, ability, fund schools and give kids a way out of those neighborhoods and give them the skills that they need at an early age. Before we talk about college, give it to them at elementary, give it to them at the secondary level, so they're already on this level field where, now that mindset you're talking about, like, hey, I can do so much more and I'm prepared. I may not have all the advantages. I may not have all this extra stuff, but I know I can get there. I have been equipped with the basics of what I need. You do those two things, I think you're well on your way to solving the problem.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I mean, you have to give people an opportunity to be successful, and don't teach them that the world is against them. Right? You got to get because that gives people an out. The
world is against you in some places.
No, that might be true, but the more outs you give people, the more outs people will take. Right? So if you can be honest and say, hey, other people have an advantage for this, that, or the other, but that will not stop you. You know what I'm saying? Don't
that won't stop you, right?
Right.
You're gonna have a say so in how this shakes out.
Yes.
If you take care of your business because we have provided you with the opportunities, you have a say so in how this all shakes out. And that's all you really want. And yeah. I don't think these kids have that chance right now. That opportunity to get to that point because again, their circumstances and you just can't expect kids growing up to just develop this mindset where I'm going to make it out. And you can't also point to those, one or two examples where, this kid overcame all the odds and say, hey, he did it. You can do it. It's like, everybody's not built that way. You can, and I always, think like this, like in a classroom, you're always going to have, those kids who excel no matter what the odds are, those kids who fail no matter what's given to them, and then everybody else who's in the middle who really is going to go by all the circumstances, all the other elements that come into play, their environment and their surroundings and all that, they're going to be, more influenced by that. And if there's nothing there, then that's what's going to happen. And if there's, again, some safety net or some guidance or, like I said, some things you can provide for them, then I think they'll be well on their way to, again, being a step better than the previous generation.
Yeah.
And keep it moving forward.
That's so big is, are you improving? Where are you improving on different levels? So I agree. You got to figure out what the actual funding is per school and what that needs to be. Right. You got to bring back vocational schools. You gotta hold your local, state and local government officials accountable for what's going on in your area. And you got to stop pushing these lifelong handouts because it doesn't benefit anybody.
And you know what? And here's where I always go with that lifelong handouts. You could actually save so much money, again, by cutting that, but by diverting that money to, okay, you're a shitty parent and you're bringing up a generation that is not going to contribute to society because they're watching your example. This is where, okay, if you have that shitty parent and their funding cuts out after 6 years, hey, we got to let you go. Now, you can't throw the kid out on the street as well. So this is where you take all of that money that would go to that parent that's not doing anything. You put that into a real foster care type environment where, okay, kids who are, growing up in these circumstances where these parents aren't shit, now they get put into an environment where they're around, mentors, teachers, people who actually have a care, in their lives and who can provide and give them the tools that they need. And you give them access to the schools that they need. And that would be so much better. so much better. And you would actually save so much money because, again, you're not giving it to some parent who's not doing anything with it.
It's such giving money away to lifelong people in the system. You'll never benefit from it. Like you said, it's just a waste of money.
Well, some will. Some will benefit.
No. I'm talking about everybody.
No, I know you're talking about the people. I'm just being, sarcastic.
Gotcha. Yeah. No.
Companies are going to benefit again.
Oh, yeah. I'm talking about as a society, right? There's no long-term benefit from that because what do you want every person? You want people to be successful because anybody that's successful is they are benefiting society in one way or the other, right? Whether it's taxes, whether it's being a mentor, whether it's somebody to look up to, whatever. There's just a lot of different ways where they're going to be beneficial. Keeping people in this lifelong system where they're dependent on the government and others, they don't benefit anybody.
It's just wasted money.
It is
wasted money and no benefits.
Yep.
And so again, you could it's just so much waste of resources, money, and you're not improving the situation at all. So again,
it's just pandering. All you're doing is pandering and saying,
fix the housing situation, fix the funding on the schools. And for me, I would say fix the foster care, because why does foster care have to be such a piss poor service in this country when, again, you have the money, it's just squandered. So I think, again, if you have a parent who's not capable of raising a child, they should be able, a kid should be able to go to a situation where they should have the tools to, benefit. Not foster care shouldn't be, and maybe not even foster care, because that's another parent taking it on, but I guess, for adoption, whatever, they shouldn't be such piss poor situations and services because we have the money to better them.
So the one of the biggest issues when you're talking about fostering, parents, like the foster parents get money, and there are people that do it because they're helping, and there's other people that just do it for the money.
Right. Like, yeah. And that's why I don't even really mean foster. I mean like group homes. More so. I understand it's not that I don't disagree with that. I wouldn't know how to do that without it becoming another incentive to ditch your kids.
No. The people like that, they don't care regardless they don't care what happens to their kids one way or the other. So there's nothing you can do to change that. They have to make that decision on their own, whether or not they're going to become a good parent or not. There's nothing you can. That's just how that is. I'm talking about is that become an incentive for all of a sudden you have this big conglomerate where they're running all these group homes just for the money aspect of it. Do you know? So that's
you always are going to have the waste though. You're always going to have waste. You're always going to have somebody milking the money. But I just think again, and maybe if you open the books and have it visible, people can see where the money's going. But I worked in a group home when I was in college, and it's just you see the kids. Okay, their parents gave up on them. That's why they're here. But then you also see like, okay, without some support, these kids are going to end up in the same role. And hell, I'm only being paid, $9 an hour, $8 an hour, and I got my own shit to worry about. So I'm really no help. I'm doing this for a check. I mean, that's not a help to the kid. So you have to, again, especially if you're going to cut parents off at a certain point, you have to have a system in place where kids can go and kids can be mentored and educated to bring them up to a point where they can succeed despite having shitty parents. Yeah. If the parents are no longer out of the situation and can't provide a roof for their kids because they weren't able to handle their business, you can't just throw the kid out with them. So the kid has to have the opportunity to better themselves. I think you can do that. You're going to have waste. You're always going to have waste. But there has to be something it has to be something. I'd rather give a safety net for the kids than the parents.
I agree with that. I agree with everything you just said. My only point was I don't know how you'd have to have people that really cared about the kids running that. And it couldn't be a business person, right? So my mind works, even though I got so many kids, my mind still works as a business aspect, right? So I'm looking, how are people going to handle that from a business? You'd have to take out people with that mindset, and it would have to be people running that purpose is the betterment of those kids.
Oh yeah, I mean, you got so many places in this country. You can just totally build schools that are far removed. If you want to be far removed from these urban cities, big areas where kids can get away and actually focus. You have so many areas in old places you could even rehab where you can move kids away from their environment, their situation, put them in a place where they have some structure, and educate them. You have the ability to, you have the space to. So
No, yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. Yeah, I just, you got just cap it, give people an opportunity to say this is what's going to happen. And I what typically happens whenever you do anything with that at first, there's going to be some rough hiccups because people are going to be like, it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen, and it becomes a wake up call for that first round that hits. Like you're saying, all of a sudden you're on payroll, you're stuck. Well, those younger people that see that, they're going to be like, shit, I need to become a better parent. I need to get my life together because they saw all the pitfalls of the people before them. Now, though, that one generation sees the generation above them and there's no pitfall for them. To them, they're just living life, the whole life.
Accountability. That's what it brings. Accountability.
Yeah. Yep.
You can't sit at home and have kids and not work because you're going to be out on your ass.
Yeah. So you got to figure that out.
Now, why won't this ever happen?
Power.
Politicians.
Yep.
Because who wants that to happen?
Who
wants the better people?
Now, politicians don't care. They only care about that vote. They care about that vote and how much money they're going to make when they get out of office. So term limits, hold them accountable. Now,
well, did you want to touch on any other topic? But I did have a question for you.
Yeah. So I think we're wrapped up with this topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think for the most part we're in agreement for that, and it really needs to happen where people are holding themselves accountable, holding the politicians accountable, and we can see a lot of really positive changes if we're doing some of this stuff.
For a man who's always wrong on everything else, it's kind of surprising to hear you say some right stuff. I got to give you that. We should have called this the Right and Wrong podcast or something.
Yeah.
But you're on point today, man. I got to give it to you.
I've been preaching this self accountability for so long, and people. I think what happens is people take that self accountability as not being. Well, one thing that is I'm not empathetic, right? So sometimes people take that as not understanding where somebody else is coming from. It's not that. It's knowing where I came from myself.
Right.
And seeing everything that I've been through and others that I know, family or whatnot, that have been through, and seeing the pitfalls of what can happen and learning from that and moving forward from it. And I think a lot of people, when I do speak, they think I'm just being callous and not caring about it. It's not that. It's at some point you have to stop making any excuses and look at and say, okay, no, I'm doing it for a reason.
No, I think what it is people have the same, they hate to see it, right? You don't like to see this and other people don't like to see it. They just don't like your approach. And then they think that you're either not getting the point or you're just, they just totally just ignore you. But it's you both identify a problem, but you have two totally opposite ways of handling a problem. And again, right or wrong, it's just a different approach, What I hate though is the always, pull your boots up, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I hate that shit because again, it's like some people are always going to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I did it, my grandfather did it. And it's like, okay, we have to acknowledge, everybody's different. Circumstances are different. And, certain people have certain advantages, even when they think they pull themselves up by their bootstraps, quote unquote, they may have benefited in one way or another that somebody else doesn't. So it's all about accountability. But again, you can put things in place that will help people to, achieve financial independence, and once you put those things out there, it's up to them to take that opportunity. But then again, it's all about incentives too. It's like, hey, here's this program, here's this training, certification, whatever skill you need, we're providing you with the opportunity to go get it. And, you have until so much time to go for it. And if you don't, then, well, your funding's cut off,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you said
is
there
that
was something.
callous?
No, it's not. But the problem is somebody will call it callous, and then they'll build up a big old push behind it, and they'll say, no, it's not fair for X, Y, or Z.
I want to hear that argument why it's not fair.
They're going to say, well, it's racist, it's sexist. That's what they're going to come back to. Like,
and I get it.
I would love to hear a coherent argument of why that's not fair, but you typically don't. They hit the same. They just beat the same drum. When that's it. That's their whole. There's no realistic reason behind it. They just know how to pull the strings, those heartstrings.
Again, you give people a skill and they'll be able to provide for themselves.
Yeah. Yep.
Give them the opportunity, give that skill. I mean, like I said, you give them the opportunity to learn that skill, and then that's it. You're done. But again, like I already said, you got too many people financially benefiting from keeping people in poverty. And so it's in their financial interest to keep the system at a status quo. So here we go. What's your next one?
No, you were saying that you had something that you wanted to move on from and talk about something.
Oh, I think you touched on term limits for a second. But nobody's really into term limits in regards to your current politicians. The only people who have really pushed term limits, or who even actually mentioned term limits, would be Bernie Sanders, an AOC, a Rand Paul at one point. I can't think of any others, but you don't have too many current politicians pushing for term limits. So I guess I always have an issue with why you want to side with one party when they're both full of shit.
What's up, y'all? Make sure to hit the bell button and the subscribe button down below. And if you enjoy what you're hearing, please stay tuned for next week's episode on another conversation between Peter and CJ. If you're watching this on YouTube, again, please make sure to hit the bell button and the subscription button down below so you will always be notified of our videos. If you're listening to us on our podcast, welcome. Hope you guys enjoy what you're hearing, and make sure to subscribe to our podcast as well if you're not able to watch us on YouTube. Okay, guys, see you next Tuesday.